Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Consider me a friend or your coworker. I love the Saints as much as you do. Every time we see each other, it's like, hey, how you doing? What you think about them Saints? Well, I'll let you know what I think, and in the comments, let me know what you think. Like the video, subscribe to my channel. I need all the help I can get. I love putting this content out, and I do it just for fun. And it would be a lot of fun if I could talk to more of the Who Dat Nation, and you guys let me know what you think, please. This is going to be my final take on the positional needs for the Saints in the upcoming draft. This would be not necessarily who you would take, but what should the Saints take in the 2025 NFL draft? The draft is only 4 days away, and this is the first time in years where I don't know what the Saints are going to do. There's no clear cut, obvious answer. I don't feel there is. This is the first time in years where I can't even in my mind figure out what would be best case scenario. Me and my own obsessed self focusing on this stuff for months. And now it's crunch time, and I have no idea what would be the best case scenario for the Saints. I mean, ultimately, with the quarterback position, if Kellen Moore's in love with a quarterback, and you got to take him. So if there's a guy that Kellen Moore loves, and Kellen Moore has, and the organization has justified the ninth overall pick for the quarterback, then that's the move you have to make. But other than that, because from my armchair quarterback coach, layman fan point of view, I'm not sold on the quarterback. So I don't know what to do. And I've done plenty of mocks, and I've mocked different positions at the first round and then tried to come back and balance the team out by getting other positions. And really, I can do it anyway, anyhow, because the Saints are in the situation they're in. We're thin. We don't have depth. We don't have a middle class on this team. A lot of our starters are old and overpaid, and we know we have to move away from them. A lot of our starters aren't that good. They're just average players. And it's every position. Every position besides kicker, to a degree punter, because you usually don't draft those, long snapper, and fullback. Uh, and we might get a tight end or a running back who could highlight as a fullback. We got a quarterback on the team in Taysom Hill that can highlight as a fullback. So yeah. So other than that, we need everything else. So this is my final ranking for, in my opinion, positions of need. And no matter what order these positions are in, they're all important. You can make a case for the last thing on this list, tight end, safety, running back. You can make a case for that to be an important pick, and you wouldn't be wrong. So this is not so much an order where you ignore the bottom. No, we need all of this. And I have 10 things written here, but it's really 12 positions because edge rusher counts for smaller defensive end and outside linebacker. So I'm going to throw that caveat in there. So I guess I don't have middle linebacker highlighted as a position of need here, along with fullback. And in the other one, it counts for two is defensive line. I'm talking about defensive tackles and big defensive ends. So defensive line, I'm thinking about stopping the run. Edge rusher, I'm thinking about getting after the passer. But edge rusher is going to include outside linebacker, and defensive line is going to include defensive tackle and defensive end. So this is how I have it ranked. And like I said, we'll start with running back. You can make running back in your top two, top three needs, and I have no argument with it. We need all of this. We need all of this. So let's start with running back. I have it at the very bottom here. It could be at the front. Okay, in my opinion, it's two tiers. Everything on the top line is the most important thing, in my opinion. Everything on the bottom line is important as well. Just I would focus on the top line first if I were going to be position specific. We have 9 draft picks. I figure if you're going to take best player available in certain situations, then you're not going to be position specific. If a guy is glaringly the best player on your board, you're going to take him. And if it happens to be an offensive tackle or a tight end or a safety or a running back, and you take him, high, it's because he was best player available. So that to me is not a position specific choice, best player available. But out of 9 picks, you got to figure at some point you're going to focus on some positional need because your team needs to be built a certain way. And you can't draft 9 quarterbacks and be like, okay, we got a team. You have to be position specific at some point. But I figure if you're going to be position specific and tackle certain position in the draft, you should limit yourself. You have 9 picks. That doesn't mean you have to take 9 different positions. You're not going to pass on Amari and Hampton in the third round if he's sitting there at pick 71. I don't think you're going to pass on Amari and Hampton. So you're going to have to leave room for best player available. That's not position specific. So out of the 9 picks we have, I figure if you can focus on 4 or 5 positions that you're going to tackle. I have 5 positions on the top line here, and I would focus on those first before I would focus on the guys on the bottom. But it all depends on the depth in the draft and where you're sitting and everything else. It could all work hand in hand. The best player available just so happens to be a position of need for the Saints. Not hard to do in this draft with this team built this way with all of the needs that we have. So, running back first. Okay, running back, we have a starter, Alvin Kamara. We're locked in with him for 2 more years, and he's a Pro Bowl type player. But we all know we need a backup running back, and we need a good one. Kendre Miller shows promise, but if he stays healthy for a whole season, he might not be the answer as number 2. He needs to develop better as an overall all around running back. And he has to stay healthy to do any of that. You're rehabbing instead of practicing, you know. And no matter how much you look at the playbook, until you go out there and get experience, you're not going to get any better. Also at running back, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he would make the perfect number 3 guy, which would be a veteran who can come in if he has to and play a lot of snaps. But is he going to be the complement with Alvin Kamara all year long? I don't know. I'm kind of hoping he's a decent back. So you have Kendre Miller, you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you have Jordan Mims, who was forced into that number 3 running back all too often last year. Jamal Williams managed to stay pretty healthy. He's not on the team anymore, but it was Kendre Miller that was out all the time. So yeah, we're at least looking for a number 3 running back and preferably a number 2 behind Kamara. In that instance, there's a position that you really need. You need another running back. So that's why I'm saying it's at the bottom of my list. It doesn't mean it can't be in your top 3, top 4. It's very important. All of these positions are. The thing about running back and why I have it so low is because I do believe you can get a good running back in the middle rounds or later rounds or undrafted guys. And since we're talking about a number 2, then it's not necessarily a starter. But you make the argument we need a future starter that's applicable here. So best case scenario, Kendre Miller takes a step. Not only does he stay healthy, but he improves as an all-around back. He's shown he can be a really good runner in spot duty. So maybe you have a number 2 if he stays healthy and he improves. Kendre Miller's not a guy we have to ignore just yet. But in my opinion, he's going to be hurt for half the year. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have to step it up. And I think if we grab another piece, it'll be beneficial. A really good piece, yeah, that'll help. The future after Kamara, yeah, that would be great. But I have it here at the bottom. Let's go to the next one, safety. We don't need a starting safety. As far as a base look goes, we have Tyrann Mathieu and we have Justin Reed. So we have 2 starting safeties. When you go in the dime package, there's an issue. You're going to need a third one. Right now, our third guy is Howard. And then after that, Ugo Amadi, maybe Millard Bradford, the undrafted guy from last year. So yeah, we could definitely use depth at safety. And if we run dime package 20, 30% of the time, then you can consider the third safety to be a starter, at least a player that's going to have a lot of time. And Brandon Staley likes to have versatile pieces. He likes to have guys that play safety, that can play in the box or deep. They might assume a linebacker role on one snap and then a deep safety role the next. You could also look at a versatile DB that can play nickel safety or outside cornerback. Ugo Amadi's one of those guys. He's just a guy, but one thing that makes Amadi so valuable is he has experience on the outside, at safety, and at nickel. So a player like that might flourish in Brandon Staley's defense. So if a guy like Amadi or a guy like Millard Bradford or Justin Reed, or if any of these guys flourish in this defense, then not only do you not need a starter, but you've got some pretty good pieces. But your base formation, you've got your two starting safeties, but it's pretty obvious you need another one. You need the replacement for Tyrann Mathieu as well. Now that's the caveat that goes into all of these positions when examining them. It seems that at every position there's one player that's just getting old. So you need a backup running back, but yeah, in a couple of years you're going to need a replacement back too for your starter. And the same thing at safety. Tyrann Mathieu is going to be good to go for a couple more years, but you're going to need a replacement eventually. Do you have to do it this year? No. You have your two starters, but it's a position of need. It's a piece that we need, and if the right player falls at the right time and you take them, it's going to make sense. All of these positions are valuable for the Saints. They're all needed. And that's safety. Let's look at tight end next. Is Juwan Johnson a $10 million tight end? We keep waiting for him to turn the corner kind of thing. He's never really put it all together. A couple of years ago, he had 7 touchdowns, and that was great. We gave him a nice little contract, and then this year we gave him another contract. He performed all right toward the end of the year last year. He has not put up overall numbers that justify 10 million a year, and regardless of how effective he is in the passing game, he's definitely not the dominant run blocking tight end that you might need if you're going to run the ball a bunch. So we have a good tight end in Juwan Johnson. We also have a really good backup in Foster Moreau. He's coming off an injury, but if he plays like he did last year, he was our leading tight end last year. And Foster Moreau started a lot last year. He started the year ahead of Juwan Johnson as a starter, and then Juwan Johnson had injury issues all year long, and Foster Moreau had to be that guy. And yeah, he's the best run blocker we have at tight end. He's just okay, and then he's a really good piece to have. I think Foster Moreau's a great number 2 tight end. I look at Juwan Johnson as a special tight end in that he can be a dominant receiver. But other than that, you know, the all around tight end, no, we don't really have that. We have it in Foster Moreau, but I think you can improve on that if you address it early with tight end. So you get an all around tight end. Of course, someone like Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, you get a guy like that in the first round, then yeah, you got your number 1 tight end. You get a couple of guys later on, though, Mason Taylor, you might end up with a better player than Foster Moreau. Way later in the draft, people like Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame or Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech. Yeah, those are good run blocking tight ends who might develop better as pass receivers. And then you get a guy like that in the 4th round or 5th round, and he might end up competing with Foster Moreau for that backup tight end spot. So there's a chance in this draft you're going to get a tight end that can come in and make this team. Let's not forget Taysom Hill. He's not built like a tight end, but he can do different things from different formations. He's coming back from a major injury as well. So tight end's not on my top level because we have 3 pretty decent tight ends. Overall, our tight end room is not the worst room in the league. There's just no playmaker there that's going to blow this thing up from the tight end position. So yeah, it's another position where we could use a body. I can see if you would want to put tight end last on this list, that would make sense. But yeah, overall, I think we can improve on Foster Morrow as a number two tight end. I love Foster Morrow as a tight end on this team. I'm trying to improve at the number one spot at tight end. So that might take a high draft pick. And the guys in the second round and third round, people like Harold Fannin Jr. or Arroyo from Miami, they're receiving tight ends, and you hope they learn how to run block. It's kind of like Juwan Johnson. So there's a lot of tight ends in this draft that do one thing good and they need help at the other thing. So that's where I have tight end down here. Offensive tackle is next. Okay, we have two starters, Fuanga and Penning. Penning is going into his fourth year. He was I would say below average to average when it came to pass protection last year. That was his third year last year, and he wasn't getting the quarterback killed every play. So he's improved enough at pass protection where he was able to start at right tackle. Now, we probably put a lot of help there for him at times. We probably designed plays to make his responsibility less of a detriment to the team while he was out there. He probably got a lot of help. But yeah, pass protection is not Penning's forte. I love Fuanga, whether he plays left side or right side. I think he's a tackle of the future, a good first round pick. But Trevor Penning, I don't know. I think it would be wise of this team to get another tackle on the roster and to plan for the future with that tackle. Because best case scenario, Trevor Penning takes another step forward. Okay, he's more consistent as a run blocker. When he's on at run blocking, he's great. You're not likely going to get too many players in the draft that are going to be dominant in the run game that he is, but he's inconsistent still at that. Last year was the first year he was healthy, and last year was obviously the first year he played the entire season. So we're still talking about a young person that's inexperienced. He was at a whole other position last year too. He took a step forward. A lot of us have faith. Man, Trevor Penning puts it all together this year, and we have ourselves a right tackle. Then he goes into the contract year. And are you willing to pay this player $20 million a year? A guy that finally put it all together in the fourth year? I'm thinking you can draft an offensive tackle in this class, probably in the fourth round. We don't have a fifth round pick, but you can get an offensive tackle in the fourth round who's going to come in and immediately be a better pass protector than Trevor Penning. That's how bad he is at pass protection. Like I said, he might take another step forward, but this is his fourth year. I think you can get a fourth rounder to come in here and be as good of a pass protector as Trevor Penning. At worst, as good as Penning. None of them might ever be as great as Penning can be at run blocking, but it's one of those positions where I think, yeah, you're good. You don't have to get it. Trevor Penning takes a step forward, great. But in the future, what do? You lose Penning after this year because somebody else is willing to pay him 20 million a year. I think if he's a starter this year and he doesn't give up 6 or 8 sacks, then somebody might be willing to pay him some money. Are we willing to pay him some money? It's a pipeline thing. I'd like to get another tackle in here, a tackle that can compete with him. And if he doesn't win the job outright, we have options. We don't have to pay Trevor Penning next year after this next year. We'll have another young guy ready to go. If you let Penning play great this year and you want to pay him $20 million a year, okay. There's only so many spots on the team. There's only so many salaries that can be 20 million a year. Think about it. I think I'd rather have Jalen Ramsey at 20 million a year than Trevor Penning. Anyway, so that's the caveat for offensive tackle. You don't technically need starters, but do you really want to pay Trevor Penning a lot of money after this year? If Trevor Penning plays at a great level next year, are you going to be sold that he's the right tackle of the future? he finally put it all together and he's going to continue to do this? That's a tough call. That's where I have offensive tackle. And the last one I'm going to talk about on this bottom tier is defensive line. We're talking about defensive tackles and big defensive ends. 3-4 defense, your defensive line's going to be big. When you're in pass rush situations, you want somebody that's smaller that can get after the passer. He's not going to be the guy in the middle of the defensive line. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's on either side of the defensive tackle, the nose tackle. He's going to be more of a wide set guy if he's hands in the dirt or perhaps an outside linebacker. I consider that edge rusher, and we'll talk about pass rushers when we get to the top tier. But the number one thing on this bottom tier is defensive line. I'm thinking about stopping the run. We have Devin Godchow at nose tackle type. Excuse my ignorance, but that's what I'll call the big 320, 330-pound defensive lineman. Nose tackle type. We have a nose tackle type in Devin Godchow, and we might have a couple behind him. We haven't seen him play in this defense yet. So whether Christian Boyd can do it or, whoever, John Ridgeway. Is Cameron Peterson still on our team? We signed him last year and he was on IR the whole year, so nobody even knows we have him. We don't even know what we have with him. But yeah, he's on the team too. So I know eventually you're going to want a replacement for Devin Godchow. He's been in the league for quite a while, never had a pass rush. So, you could address big nose tackle with Kenneth Grant early or Tyleik Williams in the second round at pick 40. If he makes it that far, you could do something, and I wouldn't be upset with it because you need that big piece. We have Devin Godchow though, so. And then you're talking about three tech defensive tackles when we look at defensive line. Three tech defensive tackles. Well, we'll run an even front sometimes, so we'll need that. That's what Brian Bresee is. That's what Nathan Shepard is. But in a 3-4, I think Brian Bresee and Nathan Shepard would also fit at end. Our defensive ends in a 3-4 can be 300-pound guys. So I look at three tech defensive tackles as potential defensive ends in a 3-4. So we're not going to steer clear of those guys in the draft because we're running an odd front instead of an even front from time to time. No, I think this defense is going to run all kinds of fronts and we're going to need all kinds of types. We're going to need the 260-pound edge rusher, 240-pound edge rusher. We're going to need the 270-pound guy that can be a defensive end on a even front. We're going to need a 280, 290-pound guy that can be end or three tech defensive tackle. We're going to need big bodies in the middle too. We're going to need all of it. So when I write defensive line, I'm talking about stopping the run. So a three tech guy like Walter Nolan, man, he'd be great to have. I think it'd be a reach at 9, but wouldn't be a reach shortly after that. So that's a guy that could stop the run better than Brian Bresee. Can he generate a pass rush as good as Brian Bresee? Brian Bresee's special at that. But Brian Bresee's not going to be on the field 100% of the time if you can't stop the run. So you grab yourself a three tech, like, oh, Mason Graham. Wow. Yeah, he's on the field all the time because he's good against the run too. Or Walter Nolan. Well, he's better against the run than Bresee, so he would be on the field. He would at least be on. He just got to be better than Nathan Shepard because Nathan Shepard starts ahead of Brian Bresee because of his run stopping. So you get a guy that's a better pass rusher than Nathan Shepard, a better run stopper than Brian Bresee. It doesn't seem like that'd be hard to do. Even a guy like Omar Norman Lott, the nose deep three tech out of Tennessee. That guy doesn't have a lot of tape against the run. There was a heavy rotation at Tennessee. So people think Omar Norman Lott might be the best pass rushing defensive tackle in the draft, but because he doesn't have a lot of film against the run, they don't know if he can stop the run. Even a guy like that would be an option for us because maybe we think he can stop the run if he's on the field more. I don't know if his numbers were really poor when he was asked to do it. He just was always out there rushing the passer and doing a great job at that. So, yeah, none of those guys are off the board for the Saints, in my opinion. If Omar Norman Lott is just good at rushing the passer, wow, okay. I bet Brandon Staley can find a spot for him on the defensive line. Yeah. And then there are those defensive ends who are 280 pounds, guys like Jared Ivey or Savion Jones or Elijah Roberts or Jordan Birch, guys that could be considered defensive ends or edge rushers, but they're big enough to kick inside on even fronts too. So Shemar Stewart, I don't want Shemar Stewart at all. I'm just talking about a guy that size that actually has production, preferably. So defensive ends that are 280 to 300 pounds on this team is going to be fine. Matter of fact, I think in the fourth round you can get a couple of really good ones, like the guys I mentioned, and then yeah. Thing is, we re-signed a bunch of guys on the defensive line, so they're going to have to play good. We're going to have a role for them. They're going to have to be good players to make an impact. You also have to consider the age and maybe eventually getting away from some of these players on the defensive line. We just re-signed most of them. Extended Colin Saunders, extended Nathan Shepard, re-signed Chase Young, extended or restructured Cam Jordan. We've already got Carl Granderson who's in there. Isaiah Foskey's going to assume a new role as a stand-up guy now, and maybe. Can you imagine if Foskey turns into something this year? Year three, and he's finally doing it, and we're like, wow. I wonder how that happened. Dennis Allen doesn't know how to use those players. Look at Zach Bond. So can you imagine if our second round pick Foskey actually becomes something? I don't want to get crazy here. I'm just saying there's a lot of defensive linemen on this team, and we're not sure how they're going to be used in this new defense. If you address defensive line, you better have a purpose and a meaning. And I still have it so high on this bottom tier because we can improve against the run everywhere. And, we might eventually move away from some of these players. But it is a log jam there. So, all right, that ends the bottom tier. And now we're going to the top tier. These are the most important positions for me. If I were going to be position specific in this draft 4 or 5 times, it would be this top tier. But like I said, that bottom tier is important too, super important. So edge rusher, yeah, we never get small defensive ends. Dennis Allen had no use for him in his defense. Dennis Allen's defense throughout the years has done everything well. There were years when we were dominant against the run. There were years when we were dominant against the pass. And Dennis Allen's defense is basically rush four linemen and keep everybody in coverage, and every now and then you blitz somebody. That's why he wanted four athletic, big defensive linemen, because those were the guys that were going to be constantly rushing the passer, and then he was going to mix in a little blitz in, but mostly play coverage. So we were good against everything at one point or another in Dennis Allen's defense. So when I think about the defense, I don't think so much about, well, the players we have aren't any good, but that's because they were in a Dennis Allen defense. But then Dennis Allen could have been screwing up toward the end anyway. We've seen where he did not utilize certain players right. Trey Hendrickson and Zach Vaughn, and they all go and they're successful somewhere else. He utilized Caden Ellis right. He had Caden Ellis had to play Pete Werner's job, and Caden Ellis was better at getting after the passer than Pete Werner ever will be. So that was good use for that kind of type of player from Dennis Allen at one point. But we're not with Dennis Allen anymore. So let's see. The new Staley system. Are these players who are so bad against the run going to be better in this system? I don't know. But one thing we don't have is an edge presence. A pass rusher at defensive end who can pin his ears back and get after the passer, and also outside linebackers who can cover and run fast and affect the passer. Pete Werner could never affect the passer. In Staley's 3-4, if we're going to have four linebackers out there, I think Werner's going to be in the middle with Davis. And yeah, who do we have for outside? Who do we have that's going to be able to do that? Can Pete Werner show something as a pass rusher? I don't know. We haven't seen it yet. He's been with us for years. He might be able to in this new system. But outside linebacker, an outside presence, an edge presence, whether it's at the second level or the middle of the field with the linebacker in coverage, chasing mobile quarterbacks down, making tackles against the run. We need an outside presence, an edge presence, and he's going to have to pin his ears back and get after the quarterback well too. So outside linebacker, we don't have it, and pass rushing edge specialist, we don't have it. So that's why that's on the top of the tier here. It's something we don't have, and it's something that I think we're going to need for Brandon Staley's defense to work. So I expect at some point in this draft to focus on an edge player, whether that's a pass rusher on the line that might play some linebacker or a bona fide outside linebacker that can just get after the passer. We're going to need an edge presence. We don't have it. We're going to need it, especially for this defense. All right, wide receivers next. Everyone knows we don't have the big body wide receiver. We have a good wide receiving core. You call certain plays, and I think you can probably scheme these guys open. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, they're both Pro Bowl type players. Rashid Shaheed is a Pro Bowler as a returner. Rashid Shaheed is more of a big play guy. He's not so much of a number two wide receiver that's going to move the sticks for you. I think there's a place for Rashid Shaheed on this team and on the field a lot, but I think what we're missing is a true number two. And in my opinion, Chris Olave is just a high level number two. We're kind of missing a number one. There's certain things Chris Olave can't do. There's certain things when Chris Olave is asked to do it, he gets hurt doing it, making contested catches, being in the middle of the field, or being a physical presence on the outside. You throw a fade to Michael Thomas in the red zone, it's totally different than throwing a fade to Chris Olave in the red zone. So there's just certain things our receivers can't do. All right. We've got two really good starters in Olave and Rashid, and now we've got Brandon Cooks. Either one of them go down, Brandon Cooks can step right in and do everything those guys do. We were missing that from a third wide receiver last year. When you lose both your starters and there's no guy that can come up and assume the number one role. If he was a true number one guy, he'd be number one on the field already. It's hard to have your number two become your number one. It's hard to have your number three become your number two and just all of a sudden be a good starter. So it's hard to do. We have a piece now in Brandon Cooks. Somebody gets hurt, Brandon Cooks can take their place, no problem. We're still missing the big body. We're still missing the contested catch guy on the edge or in the middle of the field or in the red zone. We're just missing that type. Now, can you get that type later on in the draft, and will he be good enough to do it just because he's the body type you have? That's the question. You can grab big bodies in the later rounds. You can just go grab the biggest wide receivers in rookie free agency that you want, and try to assume that role. We had a guy like that in A.T. Perry. It didn't work. 6th round pick. He had the body type. He just didn't make it. He's on Denver's practice squad now, so I don't know if you can get away with just grabbing a big guy for the sake of grabbing a big guy. But do you really want to spend an early pick on it? There's a couple of good ones there. T Mac and Jaden Higgins, Jack Besh, Alec Iomanner. There's a lot of big ones you can go and get. Not sold on Savion Williams being an X because I don't trust his hands. But there are some big guys you can get. You might have to get one really early if you want him to be an every down impact guy. If you want a guy next to Chris Olave, you want Olave to be your speed guy, your number two guy, yeah, you're going to have to dress it early. Whether you dress it early, middle rounds, late, whatever, it's definitely a player we don't have. A number. I mean, if he's that good, if that body type is what we need in this offense, he'll have to be on the field all the time. So you would like to have a number one big body guy. I think Moore can scheme some stuff for the three guys we have. So let's say Chris Olave gets hurt, he's going to miss a couple of weeks. So you're going to roll out Brandon Cooks and Rashid Shaheed. Okay, we might be able to make this work. We were doing Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed stuff. We can do the same stuff with Brandon Cooks and Rashid Shaheed. But like I said, do you need that big body in there for this offense to work? You might need it. Maybe you don't. So Olave's out for 2 weeks, and then Brandon Cooks strains his hamstring in practice, and he's doubtful for the game. Now you're rolling out Rashid Shaheed and whoever else, and we're right back to where we were last year. It's not going to take a lot to be right back where we were last year. Hopefully, the youth on this team get a little better. Dante Pettis, Bub Means, maybe Cedric Wilson actually is a veteran presence that could be out there starting a couple of times in this new offense, maybe. But I think wide receiver is pretty important, and I think the body type is important as well. So very important for wide receiver. Next, cornerback. I don't know if Alante Taylor's going to make it on the outside. I think he's going to be fine if he practices all off season, if that's what he's asked to do the whole year, and then you put him out there and you let him do it all year. I think physically he can manage. I don't think we're dead in the water at starting cornerback if it's Alante Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and then in case of emergency, Isaac Yiadom. So you still need a fourth one. I always say you need to have four cornerbacks. You need to be four cornerbacks deep. You need to be four outside cornerback deep. You really need to be six deep at cornerbacks. The real saying is you can never have enough cornerbacks because you're basically starting three. You're going to have a nickel out there most of the time. So you're starting three. And nickel's a specific position that you have to have a backup. Ugo Amadi's our starting nickel right now. I mean, that's okay, but that's okay for a couple of games until your starter comes back. Alante Taylor at nickel, I think, would be an excellent starter. And then I think you'd be okay. Taylor at nickel, if he goes down a couple of weeks, you put in Ugo Amadi. So really, you need an outside cornerback to make all of this go. Is Isaac Yiadom going to be the starter next to Kool-Aid McKinstry so that Taylor can be at nickel again? I don't know. You have to address cornerback high if you're going to affect the team in that way. Get a number one cornerback, which is might be what we need to make everything work. Get a bona fide number one outside cornerback like Will Johnson. Put Taylor back at nickel. If Johnson or Kool-Aid get hurt, Isaac Yiadom can come in for a few games. If Taylor gets hurt, Amadi comes in for a few games. That would help a lot. Outside cornerback. You could also just get a guy that's versatile that can play anything like Ugo Amadi does. A guy like Jade Barron, for instance, who could start on the outside, who could highlight at safety, and can definitely be your nickel guy. You could do that, and you can mix it up. Have Taylor on the outside and Jade Barron at nickel, and then the next play have Barron on the outside and Taylor at the nickel. Blitz both of them, you know. I think Taylor would make an excellent safety if he could get some time there. And in a Staley system, you may need to shift from one position to the other. And so, yeah, I think Jade Barron is a really good fit for this team. It's actually my prediction of who the Saints are going to draft at pick 9. I haven't changed my mind about that yet. I mean, I'm thinking it's going to be a quarterback because if they have a quarterback in mind, you better take him. But yeah, if the board falls the way I'm looking at it and quarterback is not high on their list as far as, their player rankings, then yeah, my pick for the Saints is Jade Barron. Either way, cornerback's important. But my two most important positions, they're all important. But God, we need a starting left guard. We need a starting left guard. I'm not sold on the guy we just got from where Tennessee. Their offensive line was awful. This guy allowed 6 or 8 sacks, and now I'm going to plug him in at left guard and be happy with it. I don't think he's as good as Lucas Patrick, and Patrick is gone. If Shane Lemieux was on this team, he'd probably be fighting for that left guard spot against this guy we just signed. I'm trying to upgrade. You know, when McCoy was healthy, we still had an issue. We had an issue at left guard. We had an issue at right guard. We had an issue at right tackle. That happened all year long. Penning had his best year at tackle, whatever. It was an issue. He got beat quite a bit. He needed help all the time. Cesar Ruiz, he got beat a lot, especially if McCoy's not out there to try to balance things. And then your entire offensive line was in shambles. But even if McCoy and Fuanga are healthy, You have an issue at right guard, you have an issue at right tackle, but you have a big issue at left guard. I think offensive line is important to address for this team. You build in the trenches. If we spent our first four picks on offensive linemen and defensive linemen, I wouldn't be upset about it. We'd be lacking in playmakers, but we'd have a pretty solid front. We need that. But I think starting left guard is just it's there for the taking for the team. You don't spend it the first round pick on it, no. But if you get Will Campbell with the ninth overall pick, you might end up having your starting left guard because you're going to want the best players on the field, and that might be the best spot for them. Well, if some of them fall into the second round, it's a great place to get Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. That's my guy. I would love for him to be our second round pick. I would also love for Jaden Higgins at wide receiver to be our first round pick. If Gray Zabel falls out of the first round, there's a guy you could get. But most people want to take playmakers and they want to wait till the third round and hope to get Tate Ratledge out of Georgia. Is he good enough to start? Yeah, I think we can get a guard in the third round that'll compete for the starting left guard spot against Saldivari and the new guy we have. So you hope Tate Ratledge is there. I'm not sure the other two out of Georgia are ready to be a starting left guard yet, but there's might still be some options in the third round there. Charles Grant out of William and Mary could kick inside. Um, Wyatt Millum might still be there in the third round out of West Virginia. I don't project him to be a great guard or a great tackle, but you could have some options in the third round. But I think you need you need a starting left guard. And if you go into the season with just the guy you signed and Nick Saldivari, yeah, you're going to be having some of those issues if injuries come around. Lack of depth. So I think it's a massive importance. I think I'd rather take Donovan Jackson in the second round to shore up that guard spot and then just go find a big wide receiver later on. Cornerback's different. Cornerback's one of them things where if you don't get it in the first or second round, you might not get a guy good enough unless Darian Porter slips into the third round or unless Quincy Riley or Dorian Strong perform out of their minds. And you can grab one of them in the fourth round. Cornerback, you're probably going to have a much better, safer pick in the second round. But that's the spot where the best guards are. So it's tough. Best case scenario for the Saints. Kellen Moore's in love with a quarterback. He takes him at 9, and it works out. The number one need for the Saints, of course, is quarterback. And if he's in love with Jackson Dart because he wants to call a bunch of crossing routes and Jackson Dart throws crossing routes good, then we take Dart at 9. If he is in love with Shadir Sanders because he wants a point guard at quarterback, you take Shadir Sanders at 9. If you want a guy who's dynamic and can make some athletic things happen and has a great arm, you take Tyler Shupp. And you take him with round 1, pick 9, because you don't pass on him if that's the guy that's going to make your offense go and hope that he's there in the second round. I don't like that. And I don't like the idea of packaging picks to move back up. He wasn't quite good enough to take at 9, but we're going to package picks up to move up to pick 26 or 27 and get him. And then all of a sudden you're out a third round pick, a couple of picks actually. If you look at the point value chart and the Saints want to move up from 40 to let's say 31, yeah, that's going to cost you a fourth round pick. That's going to cost you a fourth round pick. You want to move up from 40 to like 26, 28, that's going to cost you a third round pick. It might cost you a third and a fourth just to get back into the second round. You really want to, I mean, in the first round, you really want to do that? We have all these extra picks. We need multiple players, but you're going to package a bunch of them to get back into the first round. It could work. I think it's unlikely, though. I don't like the idea of giving up one of our good third round picks or one of our fourth round picks, unless we can get something later. I'll move from 40 in the second round to 31 in the first round to get the quarterback if it only cost us a fourth round pick. The last one, the late one. I'll do it if that's the case. Or do like Baltimore did when they got Lamar Jackson. Baltimore moved down in the first round, and then they drafted a guy, and then because they had picked up extra picks by the move down, they had extra picks that they can move back up. Now we have extra picks because of the Marshawn Lattimore trade, but I like having nine people to draft. We need about 20, so I don't want to come out of this draft with only five or six players. I don't want to go into the season without a quarterback either, and I don't want to go into the season with a hope and a prayer at quarterback either. So if you have a guy that you think's going to make it will happen, just take him at nine. That's the way I look at it. Don't mess around. I mess around all the time. I love Will Howard. I think I can get him in the third round all the time, so I pass on him in the first round. I pass on him in the second round, and sometimes he gets taken before my third round pick, and my entire strategy is just blown up. Do you have a safety pick in case the quarterback you love ain't there? It's tough. So personally, I think the Saints are going quarterback, and if they don't, that means they're not in love with a guy who they think can come in and be the franchise quarterback. They might like some guys and hope it can work, but if you don't take them at nine, yeah, are you really that committed? And play the game. I mean, this is a gamble. You're talking about the most important position in football, the guy that you love, but you're gonna play the field. You're gonna play the boards. I do that with mocks all the time, and sometimes it doesn't work. A lot of times it does, but yeah, you want to be strategic. You want to pass on your quarterback at pick nine and then hope to find a way to get him later. And you make it and you pull it off and you make it happen. Good luck. So that's it, guys. That's the final positional rankings. I knew this video was going to be long because I love to talk about all of this, and I wanted to include different options in every round for each position because I'm, you know, I like, I know a lot about the draft. I know where you can get players at all of these positions in each round. I can tell you a guy you can get a tight end in the seventh round if he's still there. Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech. I think he used to play quarterback. You want to run blocking tight end, you get Jackson Hawes in the fifth or sixth round if he's still there. You want a running back in the later rounds? Yeah, Jordan James or Kyle Monungai or Shard Smith. You want an offensive tackle later on in the draft? You're getting a project. I didn't know who the heck Josiah Izirum was when we drafted him in the seventh round last year, and I thought I knew that draft well. I didn't know who Jordan Howden was a couple of years ago when we drafted him. And I feel like I know this draft too, and I feel like at some point the Saints are going to get somebody, and I'm going to be like, who? Even though I feel like I know 200 to 250 players, the Saints will find that guy that I'm like, huh? But yeah, I could have broke all that down. I could tell you the defensive lineman you can get in every round and all that stuff, but I'm going to limit it to under an hour. My final positional value chart and different options of what the Saints could do. What it all boils down to is the Saints have so many needs, and we have so many questions about what this coaching staff, offense and defense, are going to do. And I also have questions in my own mind about what I really think would be the best case scenario for the Saints. I mean, instinctually, I don't think there's good quarterbacks there. So you just wait, grab a guy in the middle rounds. You hope he's good, but you're kind of going for a franchise quarterback next year or the year after that. You're just trying to build a good team right now and try to survive with Rattler or whatever free agent you can grab, and then you focus on quarterback next year. I mean, that might be the move for me based on my small mind looking at all of this, but I can't argue that best case scenario would be the Saints grab their guy at quarterback at nine. And that has to be the best case scenario if it works. So yeah, I don't even know what I would do. I don't even know what would be best case scenario. Let me know what you think is best case scenario. I'm humble enough to admit this. I just don't know. I've done it so many different ways in these mocks, and I've been happy. I've walked away happy. Quarterback was the hardest one, though. Quarterback is the hardest one. That's the hardest one. I feel like if they have a guy, you get him at 9, and you just let the rest of the draft happen. And if they don't have a guy, we're going to be in trouble. But you can sure get a lot of good players if you stick and pick, and if you trade down, you can get even more. So yeah, best case scenario, Saints trade down from 9, pick up extra picks. They're still able to get a good player in round 1, and then they have a couple extra picks that they can make a move to go and get a guy at the top of the second round or late in the first round. But you have to move down and get extra picks first. I don't want to be trading away what we have now to make that move. Just get your guy at 9. So best case scenario, trade down once, pick up extra picks. You don't have to move back up because your guy's still going to be there in the second round because your guy is like Will Howard or something. But if it's Tyler Shuck or Shadir Sanders or Jackson Dart, you might just be better off taking him at 9. Let me know what you think, guys. I might have one more video before the draft, and I will definitely be doing videos breaking down all of the picks we have. So subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?